Great. Well, it's good to see all of you. It's unfortunate that we're doing it virtually, but in some ways it gives us all a little more flexibility. So there are some blessings to it. Jennifer and Anna, I just want to let you know that I did send a copy of our first proposal to the Cooks Association yesterday or maybe the day before. So I'm sure they have had a chance to review it. Would you, Donna and Leanne, would you like me to go over sections of it, or do you have any questions? What's your preference?
Donna, what would you like to do?
If you want to go through a couple sections, or go through the sections, because there's a few questions I have on a few things that if you kind of go
Sure.
through them, it might answer my questions that way.
Sounds good. And just go like this if you want me to speed up. Sometimes I take too much time.
No problem.
So the first page should not really, well, item 1 is the same thing I always include, just includes the red line changes. It should be non-controversial because it shouldn't change anything. So I think I sent that copy to you as well. And if you have questions now about that, feel free, or if you want to wait, that's fine too.
Yeah, I do have a couple questions on it, but we can do that later.
Okay. Number 2 is a language that is included in the School Board Association's model contract language. And so we're adding that to contracts that don't currently have it.
Can you tell me what that means in English?
Well,
because it makes no sense.
Yeah, this has to do with the dues deduction for the union members. And so, you have a dues checkoff for members. If they're part of the union, then, there's that dues deduction checkoff.
Yes.
And so this just protects the school district from lawsuits based on that.
So this just has to do with union. It's not to do with insurance.
Oh, correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Dues deduction. The key phrase there is in the second to last line, dues deduction.
Okay. Thank you.
Number 3, I include each round. It's really not a big deal. Always my goal is to try to simplify the contract. We really don't need that section, but if you want to leave it in, that's an easy withdrawal for us. So you can think about it and just let me know either way. The fourth one, I'm sure you've seen before in previous negotiations. Typically schools do not, or agreements do not include actual summaries of position descriptions, but we have in this contract. If we do keep those descriptions in there, Brent did suggest that we add ordering to responsibilities for cooks and then eliminate the position description for baker because we have no plans of bringing back the baker position. Let's see. Oh, for Pete's sake, in section 6.3, we'd like to define full year because the term is used in section 7.14, and I'm sorry I didn't look at section 7.14. I wonder if that's an outdated reference. Let me take a look at that and get back to you because 7.4 doesn't. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Now it says it. The 7.14 says full year employees will have the option to be paid, and then it talks about the pay options, but nowhere in the contract, as far as I know, is full year defined. So does that mean it's, someone who's worked, for the full 9 months during the school year, or is it a 12-month employee? I think it's the former, but it'd be helpful if we could just define that. We aren't trying to change anything. We just want to explain what it is in the contract. The item number 6 We would like to pay for tuition and mileage if there is someone obtaining or maintaining a food protection manager's certification. And Donna or Leanne, maybe you could, or Amy, maybe one of you could explain what that is for the group if you have time.
Okay, so with this, I don't agree that they want to change that because as a manager, you have to have the manager certificate. And that renews every 3 years. And then we have to take, like, I just got done taking a 4-hour class to keep my license. And I get paid for that 4-hour class. Now it looks like they're trying to not pay us for something that it's required of us to have.
So you're saying that you have been like paid an hourly wage to obtain or maintain that certificate?
Yes. It was a
Oh,
4-hour
okay.
class. A 4-hour class that I just took, that I got paid 4 hours regular time to take that class to maintain it. The other stuff where if we have to go somewhere, they pay mileage for whatever, that's one thing. But to maintain the manager certificate, if they weren't requiring us to have it, it'd be one thing, but if they're requiring us to have it and it has to renew every 3 years, they should be paying for that renewal.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, that's what Brent had originally suggested. I thought this was an add-on that, you know, we would pay for the SNA certification, sorry. And then we were going to start paying for the food service manager certification.
No.
Clearly, if it's required, we should be paying that hourly wage.
Yeah, hard
Dan's
time with
laughing
that
because
word,
I
don't you?
cannot say that word.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you don't mind, I'll come back with the second proposal and I'll reword that so that it does include an hourly wage. Does that is that something you do like at home or at the school, or do you have to go someplace?
In the past, we've had to go to like, the community college used to have the classes. The last 2 times I've had to renew, it's been an online 4-hour class.
Okay,
So
okay,
I know Sheila at Sunnyside had to renew hers last year and I had to renew mine this year, and it was an online 4-hour class.
makes sense. Do you have to pass a test or anything at the end of the 4-hour class?
Yes, you gotta pass all the newer licenses.
Has there, and these are truly just questions that I'm thinking of on the fly here. Have there been incidents when, you know, it's taken like 3 or 4 times to pass the test, or is it usually you kind of take the class and you just do it?
For the renewal, you take the class, you just do it. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. I'll know how to word it then.
Okay.
Let's see. The next 2 subdivisions just kind of outline expectations that we have for new employees. So I'm hoping that's the same or similar to what is currently expected.
If you're on number 7,
Nope, I'm still on number 6, but on the next page.
okay. Okay.
And then one thing we'd like to do is to provide a computer device for each employee for training, completing these certification programs, learning on e-learning days, and completing other work-related duties. And then, of course, each employee is responsible for care of the device. So I know that, I don't know how many food service workers have had computers over the last year, but we'd like to make sure that each person does have a Chromebook to use.
Right now, I think each of us head cooks have one if anybody needs them.
Okay. The next section is overtime pay, and please pay attention to the note at the beginning. You know, this is not intended to reduce anyone's pay. You know, the thinking here is that to simplify the contract, that we would just pay overtime for hours worked in excess of 40 hours per week. I know that Donna and perhaps some others work more than 8 hours a day, and so they've been getting that time and a half. You know, the thinking is that if we could come up with an estimation of how many hours that is per year, where, you know, like Donna and others get the extra pay on because they're working more than 8 hours, but for some reason it doesn't kick over 40, you know, and then, you know, our suggestion would be to add an hourly pay rate to that to more than compensate for lost revenue. So that's our thinking. I haven't looked at any data, you know, from payroll to see if that's even a reasonable solution, but we'd like to at least consider it. So we're not trying to hurt anyone's overall pay, I can tell you that. But that's the proposal. Item number 8, we'd like to change the effective dates of step increases from March 31st to December 31st. For many of our contracts, we have that December 31st date in there. So if someone's hired before that time, then they get a step increase the following year. If they're hired after December 31st, then they have to wait another year before they get the step increase. Yeah, number 9, I was going to check with Holly Powers about this, and I haven't had time because we've been in and out of the office at different times. But we just want to clarify, or I want to clarify, if 19 equal payments semi-monthly beginning with the September 15th payroll. Is that how you're currently paid, the 9-month folks?
You have the choice of being paid. And for 19 or for the whole, or stagger it throughout the whole year.
Oh, so there is a choice.
Yes.
Okay. And so for those who choose the full year option, does the first payment still come on September 15th?
Yes.
Okay. Here, let me catch up on some notes here.
Can I ask a question before we get too far? I'm looking at about the overtime, and that all overtime must be pre-approved in writing by the nutrition service director. I mean, overtime sometimes because you have to stay over and the director is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, Amy, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And, you know, we haven't had, as far as I know, we haven't had any problems or issues with, you know, people putting in overtime pay.
Sure.
And so I think the in writing makes sense for a lot of employee groups, but I don't know if that's necessary with the Cooks Association.
I don't know that it would fit for us because we only
Yeah.
say if we have to, trust me.
Well, plus you have to make the decision right then
Right
and there.
then. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, totally get it. And that's not a critical thing for us.
Okay.
So that'd be an easy one for us to withdraw as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Usually if that happens, I drop it, like if it's our school, I drop an email to Bronte because of this, staff had to stay later. And so we got the email, so it's kind of in our writing, you know, covering us a little bit of information on why.
Sure. Yeah, there would be ways around it, but I don't want to, you know, if it's any concern at all, I'd rather just withdraw it and we can always, you know, address it later. Or maybe it's verbal approval from the building head cook. Well, we'll talk about that more in our next proposal. Let's see. Hold on a second, I'm still taking notes here. All right. The next one should be an easy yes, because we've already signed an MOU. And this has to do with the change in, you know, our payments through the HRA. And so we'd like to say HRA or VBA. And so we've already, you know, agreed to that with an MOU, but we want to include it in this contract. The next one, Leanne, this has to do with your question about the insurance benefits. You know, and this would be, you know, our only obligation is to purchase the policy, pay the amounts. and no claim shall be made against the district as a result of denial of insurance benefits by an insurance carrier. It's very standard language, but I have to acknowledge that I don't know why an insurance carrier would deny insurance coverage for one of our employees who's qualified. So I honestly don't know, you know. But anyway, that's our standard language that we're trying to include in our contracts.
In all contracts, not just ours.
Yeah, I go through, I send periodically I send contracts to the School Board Association to review, and they always mark that in each one. I'd have to look through the contracts to see if we've included in others or not. I know that's our intention, you know, long term, but I'd have to look through each one to verify. Item 12, I think will be an easy one for you to say yes to. Again, with other contracts, we've been increasing the maximum of short-term unpaid leave. We used to have all contracts with 5 days, as you may know, but now we're increasing them to 8 days. And so that actually gives your group members more flexibility in terms of those short-term unpaid leave days. So now, Jennifer and Anna, if I haven't explained that whole situation to you, I'll spend about 2 hours with you another time. But it was a good solution to a problem, or it was a good solution to an issue that surfaced. And so I'll explain more later.
You did kind of explain it the last time that we met.
Was that the time when you two were falling asleep? Did I go on and on about that kind of stuff?
It was fun.
Okay, yeah. So again, you know, to be fair to the cooks, you know, we want to increase that to 8 days. You don't have to use them, but it gives you more flexibility. Number 13 should be an easy one to say yes to. It was odd that to include pregnancy was included in the title of that section because disability illness leave includes pregnancy. That's just kind of part of the deal. But for some reason, it was included as a parenthetical comment for many contracts. Number 14, I think, is another easy one to say yes to. It's really saying the same thing, it's just in a different form. Number 15 is information about, oh, I had this down a while ago. Oh, yeah, this talks about insurance if someone's on an unpaid leave of absence for a period of time. Number 16, the request is just to identify who receives retirement letters. Got to tell you, my preference would be, you know, for members to send it directly to Amy French, but her position title has changed, you know, and it could change again, who knows? And so you'll probably always have a superintendent, and so the thinking is just submit it to me and I'll literally walk 2 doors down and give it to Amy. But we do want to clarify who receives that letter. Number 17, again, is something that's non-controversial. We used to have people, like if they retire, they would have to pay the business manager each month for health insurance and then have to pay by check. Now with our third-party vendor, people can set up automatic payments. I think it's a lot slicker for everyone. And so that's how we've been doing it. So I think that one will be agreeable. Number 18 is not that's more controversial. We would like to see the probationary period increase from 6 months to 12 months so that we have a better understanding of a employee's work performance over the whole 12-month period instead of just 6 months.
Are you talking calendar months or school year months?
Oh, I'd have to talk to Amy and Holly to verify, because that makes a big difference.
Okay.
The next one is just a request to submit resignation letters to me. Again, I'll just hand them over to Amy. Number 20, which relates to section 13.2. This one has always seemed really odd to me because it talks about employees who cannot work full-time because of their age or physical condition may continue in the service at the option of the school board. Determinations of fitness shall be the responsibility of the school district based on physicians' recommendations, and that will pay for the cost of any physical required. That's always struck me as a concern because it talks about age. And I know some of our contracts previously, or at least one contract, had like a maximum age in the contract itself, which I think almost for sure would be discriminatory. And so we got rid of that. And so it just doesn't make me feel comfortable because we don't want to discriminate, based on age. Obviously, if someone needs help because of some physical limitations, then we could work through the ADA process to see if we can resolve it that way. And again, I don't want to take something out of the contract that, could be hurtful. So, perhaps if your group or Dick Gorman think, yeah, it's okay to get rid of, then we can do it. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Or we can
How about if
wording
we
between-
just reword it? Not
That's also a
necessarily take it
possibility.
out. Okay.
Yep. If we could reword it in some way, I think that would be good. Let's see. Oh, number 21. Once again, this is typical in the model contracts from the MSBA. But I do want to let you know that this is kind of a big deal because including this section in the contract would mean that an employee has to choose between a grievance procedure or the court system. Without this in the contract, then really an employee could kind of pursue both avenues. And so that would be potentially a fairly significant change that could theoretically impact employees. So I think it would be good to have in the contract, but I would understand if the Cooks Association said no, thank you. So
Otherwise, if you bring something
number-
else, you can't come back at anything then, correct?
could you repeat that one more time?
So you're saying if say somebody put a grievance in and they don't like the way the grievance came out, they'd have no grounds to go back to sue or anything, is what you're saying?
Correct. Yep. It also means that you can't do it at the same time.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that would impact, the Cooks Association potentially.
Yes.
Number 22 is was suggested by Brent, and it just makes sure that employees, according to seniority, can be offered the additional hours if there's a lunch schedule change, and that Brent would be the one approving those additional hours. Number 23 probably looks familiar to you. Once again, we're hoping to get rid of the word temporary, from the transfer language. Donna's laughing because a lot of these things, Jennifer and Anna, kind of come up every year. And one thing I never expect all of this stuff to be resolved. I mean, for either side. But I think we've made some pretty good changes over the years in the contract, and we're just hoping to keep making, you know, some changes. The article or the section about student workers.
Question why we're taking it out, because if we're able to have student workers again, why would we take it out of the contract? I know
Well,
this year
the
we couldn't
thinking-
because of COVID.
Yeah, the thinking is that student workers are not part of the union. You know, so really, you know, they shouldn't be discussed as part of the contract for the union. Hello, Pam. Hope you don't mind if we got started.
No, I'm so sorry I'm late. I was stuck at work.
Oh, yeah, no problem at all. We're just going over our first proposal. And we're talking about student workers, and my thinking about deleting that is that, you know, student workers are not covered by the contract, and so they shouldn't be, you know, part of the contract. I think the only significant part there would be if there are student workers who are absent, then, you know, oftentimes that would lead to overtime. So, you know, one possible compromise would be to include that phrase like in the overtime section or something, or additional hours or something.
I was just gonna suggest that. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, for Pete's sake, this is going on and on here. Number 25 again is typical language for school district contracts. As far as, you know, that this agreement is the full and complete agreement. The only part that you might find questionable would be the third sentence where it says nothing in this agreement shall be construed to obligate the school district to continue or discontinue existing or past practices. That would be the one thing, if I were in your shoes, that would be the one thing I'd question. You know, I think the rest of the language in that paragraph is pretty straightforward and commonly accepted. The next part is 17.4 as far as severability. And I think that's probably good for both sides. It just simply says that if one of the sections or one part of this agreement is illegal, you know, we still need to follow through with the rest of the contract. That's essentially what severability means. So I think, you know, certainly, you know, think about it, talk to Dick or whoever about that part, but I think that should also be included in the contract. We're getting there. Number 26, you know, I figured the first proposal was too long. And I think these two particular articles about hiring, transfers, additional hours, as well as school closing, should probably be in a separate section when, you know, maybe it's the whole group, maybe it's just Donna, Leanne, and I, and a board member, you know, I don't know what it looks like. But especially that school closing one, I think we need to really consider our current language and hopefully simplify the language, and you know that might benefit the Cooks Association. One thing that we are planning to do for next year is have e-learning days or flexible days, and that could impact the cooks. And so I think we better really highlight that one. And I think we can make some language that's advantageous to both parties. The last part. If you know me well, you know that I hate bringing up finances in our first proposal. I hate it. But, you know, I think, you know, the committee members and I kind of thought, you know, this is the right thing to do. And so I'm really glad we did it. First, we'd like to, and this is all kind of a package deal. And again, the purpose is let's get through some of this stuff as soon as possible, because we got to talk about money and insurance and, you know, possibly some other compensation issues like school closures. So, you know, this year I know we had a one-time deal for, you know, the extra pay. We would like to just change our uniform allotment so that every year instead of $125 a year, you'd get $175 per year. So it's not a one-time deal. We just like to do it. And then also, Brent suggested some changes to the expectations for uniforms. My guess is that this is because we don't have the baker position, but I honestly don't know. And then for some reason, I had hair nexts in there, not hair nets. It was a spelling mistake. Brent suggested that we use the word restraints. It's probably more general. So I'm assuming that part would be okay with the group, but obviously you need to think about it. We would like to make movement on the SNA certification. We'd like to increase it to 25 cents, an additional 25 cents per level, plus open it up to all employees, the level 4. Right now, only, a small group of employees can get it. But we want to encourage all of our food service workers to pursue that. So I think that's advantageous to group members. And it might even exceed, what your proposal was for that, the SNA certifications. The last one, I think, is your proposal, if I'm not mistaken, where we would pay the Colville Family Center cook the additional money for the extra work that he or she does. And then finally, if and only if, and I don't have your proposal in front of you, so I'm sorry about that. I think a couple of those are actually directly related to what we're proposing in this package. One of them is probably holiday pay, because we really don't want to give more holidays. It's not the money, it's just the concept. We'd rather put it on the base pay than holidays. And I don't know the others offhand. I don't have it right in front of me, so I'm sorry about that. Well, my 10-minute conversation turned into just over 30. But I thought there were some good questions, and hopefully, our position was clarified a bit.
So we're not going to talk at all about insurance?
Yes, we will, but we aren't ready to do it tonight.
Okay.
And
Yeah, and I will say that, wages, of course, are always important. Personally, I think we should really look at career incentives and insurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will take this into consideration, talk it over, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, do you want to set up a time now for our next meeting, or?
I will email you.
Okay, that sounds good. Just email me, and then we will figure out the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
And then,
I do have one question.
Well, Donna, go ahead. Donna has a question.
Brent mentioned, Carson, that you might have some paperwork as far as summer foods that you might be able to give us before we can post that job. Do you have something like that to send us?
We talked about the extra pay for working in the summer. I was going to go through my notes.
Okay, he didn't tell me what it was about. He just said to ask you about summer foods. So.
Oh yeah, we've talked about adding $2 per hour for summer workers. But I'm gonna have to talk to Anna, Jennifer, and Pam, about that issue, just to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, and one thing to think about when you guys talk about that is for summer foods right now, we are looking at probably having to do an evening distribution. So normally summer foods is a few hours during the day. We are looking at now having to do probably one day a week where we work an evening. So keep that in mind when you guys talk.
Would that be over 8 hours a day, do you think?
No, we would still not
Okay.
be over 8 hours a day. Yep.
But you'd actually be
For the day-to-day
shifting.
week- Yes. It'd be kind of an in and out type thing because we're still going to have the school programs. We'll still have, the Kids Junction programs. But then one day a week, we would be doing the community pickup, which are probably Wednesday afternoons or evenings. So just to
Gotcha.
capture the community, to help community that are working that might have to pick up, outside of work hours. So to
Okay.
kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, I didn't know about the evening work, but that's a benefit to our community. There's no doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I met with Brent today, and so we kind of went through that, so, okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, if Anna, Jennifer, and Pam and I will stay on the call, and we'll chat and just about summer food and maybe some other things. And then Leanne will email me and we'll kind of go from there.
I will. All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
So Lisa, I think you can stop recording. And then, maybe I could record kind of a closed session or the discussion that we'll have. Uh-oh. Come on in. Oh. Yeah.